Texas is looking to turn the tables on the Chinese Communist Party. And right now, the Chinese Communist Party, they have several programs to hunt down, harass, even deport, bring back to China, dissidents, even living in the United States. The CCP sends agents here to do this. But Texas, they have a new measure they're working on to fight back against the CCP agents working on U.S. soil, including the ones trying to subvert our government and bribe our government officials and so on. We'll be talking about it. And in other news, Donald Trump, he's allegedly planning to challenge a law from 1974 against what's known as impoundment. And if you don't know what it is, well, it's important to learn about because I didn't know about it either. If Trump can overturn this, he could cut government spending with or without Congress. He won't even need them. This was legal and used by many presidents going back to the founding fathers, only banned since '74, and Trump is going to try to overturn it. Also, Comcast is looking to put MSNBC up for sale, and guess who could be in the running to buy MSNBC? Well, billionaire Elon Musk. And he's laughing all the way to the bank. He thinks it's hilarious, and he might do it. Let me know your thoughts on Musk potentially becoming the owner of MSNBC in the comments. Good idea, bad idea? What do you think? And that said, folks, let's dive into today's stories. First off, on Texas, right? The Chinese Communist Party, they have several programs to hunt down, harass, even try to send back to China dissidents living in the United States. Oftentimes, their only crime is criticizing the Communist Party. Now, leaked documents have outlined even CCP initiatives on this front aimed at exporting its human rights abuses, but now Texas, well, they're turning the tables on the CCP. The FBI, they created a new hotline where people can call in and report CCP agents, CCP operations, just right now in Houston, Texas. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott, he's following up on this with a series of orders to investigate these operations, identify, arrest CCP agents, and try to put an end to this within the United States. Now, look, part of this started with an alert from the FBI's office in Houston, Texas. Have a look at this. This is their official announcement. They say the government of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist Party, may be cyber stalking, physically intimidating and harassing Chinese citizens, naturalized U.S. citizens, and families of dissidents who speak out against the Chinese Communist Party in Texas. I should note this is actually not limited to just Chinese people. I've personally been threatened by these CCP networks, personally. Now they note here, the notice includes a new hotline where people in the Houston area can report CCP operations being used to target, threaten, intimidate, and harass people in the United States who question the legitimacy or the authority of the Chinese Communist Party. And look, that same day, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, this is November 18th, just recently, he released an executive order taking even further steps to protect people in the United States against the CCP's operations in our own backyard. And he even expanded this to include operations along these lines from any foreign adversary, any of them. Now look, he notes Chinese Communist Party programs on this. One of the big ones is Operation Fox Hunt, are used by the CCP. They deploy their agents to the United States, and they use their own agents in America to try to harass and arrest people who fled China oftentimes. Now that operation is under the Chinese Communist Party's Ministry of State Security. And he notes these dissidents are often guilty of nothing more than opposing the PRC government or CCP actions, including by exposing corruption. You expose a corrupt CCP official, you flee to the United States, the Chinese Communist Party will send agents after you on American soil. They'll threaten your family, threaten to kill you, threaten to kill your family, try to make you kill yourself, or say come back to China, face the death penalty, and your family will survive. The CCP is doing that in America. Now look, Governor Abbott notes that as part of these operations, the Chinese Communist Party will try to force dissidents to return to China by threatening their families still living in China, by using its various networks abroad to target dissidents in their host countries like the U.S., and even, quote, kidnapping and smuggling dissidents back into the PRC, China. And look, the FBI, they're now been going after some of this. They've actually been going after CCP agents part of this network for a bit now. Just for example, this was from 2020. Watch this.
Once victims reported China's harassment to the FBI, we began a multi-year investigation in order to bring the perpetrators to justice and vindicate the rule of law. And the FBI is proud to have this investigation culminate in criminal charges, the first of their kind, charges that will help China understand that surveilling, stalking, harassing, and blackmailing our citizens and lawful permanent residents carries serious risks.
Now, like I see in the chat, California gal's asking, does the CCP come after Christians in America too? Yes, they do. House Christians in China are persecuted just as well as every other group. The CCP also has used them for forced organ harvesting. They persecute them, tear down churches, and if you criticize the CCP, no matter what you are, they will target you. You have a lot of Chinese Christians who fled to the United States who exposed corruption. They are also hunted by the CCP through this program. And look, we've actually seen other cases as well. In 2023, 3 individuals were convicted for their roles with the Chinese Communist Party's Operation Fox Hunt, the one they used for this, carrying out operations right here in New York. And look, there's actually been a steady flow of cases like this, which are part of different Chinese Communist Party operations, which they use to extend human rights abuses outside of China. Some of it can be as simple as, say, threatening the business operations of a major American corporation, like they do with the NBA when they call out human rights abuses in China, like they do to major film studios if they want to show a side of China the CCP doesn't want shown. They will try to silence people, they will attack people, they'll even use underhanded means to try to corrupt our government to make them go after these people. Now, as we reported just last week, in fact, a Chinese Communist Party agent was just sentenced to 20 months in prison in New York because he tried bribing an IRS agent to falsely go after the nonprofit status of New York-based Shen Yun Performing Arts. And Shen Yun, they became a particular target of the CCP because Shen Yun shows ancient Chinese culture from before the communist takeover. The CCP views that as a threat. They also highlight the human rights abuses under the CCP. And because of this, they become, again, one of the big targets of the Chinese Communist Party, where they're even trying to corrupt our government to go after it. An individual was just sentenced to prison for that, notably. The New York Times, notably, they seem to be following this trend as well on the CCP side. They've been publishing hit piece after hit piece after hit piece on Shen Yun using shoddy, error-filled reporting. And notably, the New York Times failed to disclose the Chinese Communist Party ties of many of its sources that it's been using for these pieces. And look, in addition to this, back to what's happening right now in Texas. Governor Greg Abbott, he also noted the Chinese Communist Party's secret police stations, you might have heard about these, they have them in New York, they have them in other parts of the U.S., Chinese Communist Party police stations operating in America. The regime has established these in various parts of the world, including in the U.S. and in Texas now. They have now declared new operations to dismantle what the CCP is doing on this front. They're going to start going after it and every person involved. Now, he issued several new orders to the Texas Department of Public Safety. Here's what he's saying. He says, 1, identify and bring appropriate criminal charges against individuals preying on dissidents on behalf of any foreign adversary, including China. He says, 2, work with local and federal law enforcement partners through the Texas Fusion Center, that's often in collaboration with the FBI notably, these fusion centers, to assess the incidents of transnational repression executed by foreign adversaries occurring within the state of Texas. 3, he says, uncover and document suspected actors planning, attempting, or carrying out acts of repression, and by January 15th, 2025, this is going to be a long operation, provide policy recommendations to the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker on how to effectively counter such threats and develop training programs that can be used by governmental and non-governmental organizations to identify and report this kind of illicit activity to DPS. Again, it's again the Texas Department of Public Safety. And last up, 4, they're going to create and publicize a hotline and update the iWatch Texas community reporting system so people in Texas can report potential acts of oppression or coercion by the PRC or CCP actors or other foreign adversaries against Texans. Now, this is in Texas right now. It's possible we could see this spread to other states. Now, interestingly, it doesn't end there either. After issuing this executive order, Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued another executive order following the, one day after on November 19th. And the second order takes things even further than this because they're also looking to uproot Chinese Communist Party interference in American universities and colleges, CCP subversion of businesses, and even, and this is my favorite because it's something I've been exposing for years, it's influence operations targeting elected officials. The CCP is trying to bribe, subvert, and get American elected officials serving the Chinese Communist Party, and they're going to start investigating it. Now look, in an announcement on this, Governor Greg Abbott said, our #1 priority is to protect Texans, including from espionage threats from the Chinese Communist Party and its proxies. The Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, reported that the Chinese government has actively targeted local and state officials, government officials, as part of their strategy to undermine the national security of the United States. Hardening our state government is critical to protect Texans from hostile foreign actors who may attempt to undermine the safety and security of Texas and the nation. And this executive order, he says with this, right, Texas will safeguard our critical infrastructure and information from threats posed by the Chinese Communist Party. Now look, this executive order applies to all state agencies in Texas, also all public institutions of higher education in Texas, meaning all the universities. Any company that submits a bid or proposal in Texas now will also need to certify that it has no ties with a foreign adversary, not just China, but others as well. There's also going to be new background checks for state employees and even contractors who can access critical infrastructure. Think the electric grid, think the water supply, think things like that, right? Also, state employees, if you work for the government, you will no longer be able to accept gifts or work travel with foreign adversaries. If the CCP offers you a nice fancy flight and stay in China, you cannot accept it. And they also note that state agencies will not be able to get contractors from foreign adversaries either, and higher education facilities and employees will not be able to participate in recruitment programs from foreign adversary nations. Because that's a big deal. What happens a lot of time, your taxpayer money goes to universities. Some of these universities work on projects for the Pentagon. They work on top secret things. They work on advanced weapon systems. And because they're running through the universities, sometimes you find that the professor working on that program has a deal with the CCP, and they're bringing in Chinese foreign exchange students to the program funded by your taxpayer dollars, and then when they're done with it, they bring it back to China. And the CCP builds the weapon system that our taxpayer dollars paid to research and develop. Now look, across the board, this is big. A lot of my work personally as a journalist has been exposing these exact operations of the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, I was one of the first people to blow the whistle on this on the US side. Back in 2008, I accidentally uncovered this network, and they were threatening to kill me for years because I did it. Now, look, the majority of this is what would tie into what's known as the Chinese Communist Party's United Front operations. I've been trying to blow the whistle on this for literally close to 2 decades. This has been the bulk of my work. Finally, it's getting attention. Finally, it's being taken care of. But look, it also goes beyond this. Because look, in my opinion, this is the biggest threat to the United States. This is something that is corrupting and subverting our entire country from the grassroots all the way to the top. This is one of the biggest operations of the CCP. If you want to talk about real warfare, this is what war looks like in the current age. This is war. And we're not fighting back against it, at least not till now. But look, it actually goes beyond this also. There are Chinese student and scholar associations in schools. They call them CSSAs. The CCP establishes CSSAs in all the major universities. They're operated and even funded oftentimes by the Chinese consulate. And they use this to, again, harass and suppress students, but also to steal intellectual property, get involved in these research programs, and then to get Chinese spies into targeted government positions. That's the CSSAs. There's the Chinese Communist Party's Torch program, where they try to recruit professors and other experts to go back to China or just maintain their work here, but secretly provide the CCP with all the intel. There are bribery operations where they have public officials go and meet with them at the Chinese, they call them tongs or fraternal organizations. They go to the tongs, they get votes, they get money, they get bribes sometimes, and they use this to corrupt them. There are harassment operations like the Chinese secret police stations, and there's the whole 9 yards of other programs along these lines, including military-run propaganda operations which work through these same networks. They call it liaison work. And that whole network now is being targeted to be investigated and then hopefully dismantled. Finally, again, most of my career working on this, finally it's happening. Now look, in other news, President-elect Donald Trump is allegedly planning to challenge a law from 1974 against what's known as impoundment. And if you never heard of impoundment, well, neither have I. It's probably because I wasn't alive at that time when it was banned. But basically, if he can overturn this, he could use it as a method of cutting government spending without needing to go through Congress. This is something that has been part of American law going back to Thomas Jefferson. This goes back to the beginning. It's been used many times throughout history, only banned in '74, and he's going to try to overturn it. Now, the Epoch Times says this: President-elect Donald Trump has said he intends to cut government spending by reasserting the presidential power of impoundment, a power that the President of the United States used to have. And note this is a move certain to spark a court battle and one that could redefine presidential power for decades to come. They say impoundment occurs when the president chooses not to disperse funds authorized by Congress, instead leaving them unspent in the U.S. Treasury. Imagine that. It says this power is not mentioned in the Constitution, but has been employed by presidents since Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers, from the very beginning. Now they note Congress enacted limits on the practice 50 years ago, and now Trump intends to challenge the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, which he believes is unconstitutional. And here's what he says, quote, "I will use the president's long-recognized impoundment power to squeeze the bloated federal bureaucracy for massive savings," Trump said when announcing his plan in June of 2023. Now look, on this method, impoundment, it's been used many times throughout history by U.S. presidents. Thomas Jefferson used it. Ulysses S. Grant used it. Again, he was president after the Civil War. He was a general. Franklin Roosevelt used it, again, president during World War II. Lyndon Johnson used it, who, again, like a Vietnam-era president. Nixon used it, right? Nixon. But Congress also passed a bill to limit this ability, and Nixon did end up signing that into law. And this law, again through Congress and signed by Nixon, makes it so the president needs to go through a process with Congress to use the method of cutting spending. Meaning, if Congress says we have to fund like gender studies on koi fish in Balochistan or something like that, they need to spend the money on it. The president can't be like, why are we spending money on this? He can't do it. They have to spend the money. Has to go through, right? And Trump is now working on a workaround with this, right? He may look to the Constitution, notably, to get the power back because it is, again, embedded within American law going all the way back to the founding of the country. Not technically written in the Constitution, but Trump's going to argue that it is unconstitutional to stop the president from doing it. Now here's the Epoch Times on the particular part about this. It says Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution states that the president, quote, must take care that laws be faithfully executed. Laws must be faithfully executed, and that is a role of the President of the United States. It says that Trump has said the ICA, this whole impoundment issue, that banning it violates that clause because it strips the president of discretion and how best to achieve the government's purposes. And said, quote, the ICA dramatically limited impoundment, the power of the president to choose not to unnecessarily spend taxpayer dollars, forcing the executive branch to spend every penny of congressionally appointed funds, Trump wrote in his statement. And then the second argument in favor of impoundment is the congressional appropriations specify a maximum amount that may be spent, not a minimum, right? They don't tell you how little you can spend, they tell you how much you can spend, the maximum. And what happens if you just don't spend it all? What happens if Congress delegates $1 million to something, but it only costs $100? What happens if they go to Walmart and buy a bag of bolts, as we saw, and a bag of bolts costs $50, less than that, but they need to spend all the money, so they spend $50,000 on it, as they've been doing in the Defense Department. Well, look, they're saying this. Congress, they're saying, has the power of the purse, so its appropriations necessarily set a ceiling on federal spending for a particular purpose, but it should not set the floor. How little you can spend, according to Trump. That's what he said. Now, like that argument was made as early as in 1876 when Secretary of War James Cameron wrote that, quote, spending the full amount of an appropriation was in no way mandatory. Meaning, under former constitutional interpretation, this was actually a power the president was recognized to have. And again, it's creating some problems because if Congress then delegates that we have to spend all this money, what makes it so you have to spend the maximum, every single dollar down to the very penny of what they delegate? Well, the argument is they spend money on a lot of useless stuff. Now, like as you'd imagine, there's some mixed analysis on this. Some legal experts agree. Others disagree because it is written in the law now. 1974, again, under Nixon, they passed it. And again, because it's law, well, it's law, right? You can't overturn it. If you want to argue on a constitutional ground for it, though, which Trump is now doing and saying he's going to do at least, the constitutional ground is this, that if the president has to act in discretion, that American laws are being enforced properly and there's no abuses, you cannot remove the president's power to do that. And Article 2 of the Constitution is what he's going to be using to say that this is part of the presidential powers that makes it so the president can act in good faith on that. And if you remove that power, you're basically disabling the president from having the power delegated to him in the Constitution. That's going to be the argument. The other side's going to be, well, the law states this, and how are you going to overturn a law? Well, it's probably going to go to the Supreme Court. We'll see what happens from there. Now, look, in other news, though, it seems the United States may not be alone in closing the border. In fact, guess who's joining in? Canada. In fact, Justin Trudeau is saying he's going to do it. Canada is now doing something similar as what Trump is saying he's going to do. I'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break. We'll be back in less than 60 seconds, so don't go anywhere.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. The United States may soon not be alone on closing the border because guess what? Canada is going to be doing the same thing. Folks, Canada is following in the footsteps of Donald Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He has released a public statement on this. Watch.
Canada's new immigration plan is straightforward. Lower the number of new immigrants coming into Canada, both temporary and permanent. We're prioritizing permanent residents with the skills we need, like healthcare workers for our hospitals and construction workers who will build more homes. And those temporary residents who are already in Canada, some will apply to stay in Canada as permanent residents. Since they're already here, established and working, the added pressure put on communities is very low. Or they'll leave Canada when their temporary residency expires, reducing our population.
So, in other words, what is Canada doing? Well, look, Canada is going to be pausing mass migration for 2 years. Why is that important? Because Trump's probably going to be done deporting people after about 2 years. Meaning they don't want people, I assume, right? When Trump's deporting everybody and they're going after all the illegal immigrants, they don't want them all fleeing to Canada. Canada can't deal with it. Now, Canada, for their part, they're moving back to what they call merit-based immigration. They want people who have skills. They want people who are going to benefit their economy, and they're not just going to be taking everybody. No more welfare immigration. Now, the irony is that is the old system of immigration Canada had. That's ironically the system of immigration that Trump was saying back in 2016 that we wanted. Meaning, of course, that America has basically had a more open migration system than even Canada had for a very long time. And Canada now opened it up, again, during these migrant caravans. They're going to be closing it down. And notably as well, they're also going to be implementing programs to begin deporting people, it seems. They're suggesting that, well, if you're not a citizen, if you don't have a green card or whatever their program they have is the visa programs, you're out. You can't stay there anymore. And if you want to stay, well, you need to go through the normal legal pathways to do that, which under Canadian law are a lot more strict. In Canada, again, they have it so you need to bring a skill to the country and you need to benefit the economy or you can't stay. It's called merit-based immigration. That's what Canada has. Now, that's going to narrow the window of that more than before probably as well. We'll see if people who are not eligible choose to just leave, self-deport, or if Canada is also going to have to invoke a deportation program for the next 2 years, similar to what we're going to be very likely watching in the United States. Get ready for it, because as Trump, again, says he's going to move to deport people, some people are going to try to flee to Canada, and Canada is going to have to, again, defend their borders against this. And Justin Trudeau is going to be like the northern Trump on that if he moves forward with it. We'll see how that all works out. Now, in other news, though, you might have seen it. Comcast, they're trying to get rid of a lot of their news networks. They're trying to put them in a separate company because they're not making money. Not only are they not making money, they're losing a lot of money, and it's making them look bad to shareholders. They're taking off all these different news outlets, putting them in a separate company, and trying to keep them as separate as they possibly can from their shares so they don't tank the entire thing. What is also happening is Comcast is looking to put some of them up for sale. One of the big ones right now is going to be MSNBC. And this is alongside many other big corporate news outlets running into serious problems, notably after the 2024 elections. Suddenly they're all just dying, right? They're just killing over. And now guess who? Billionaire Elon Musk. He's suggesting that he may consider buying MSNBC. Now, look, this started with a post from Wall Street Bets, and they wrote, quote, Comcast is putting MSNBC up for sale. CNN just announced massive layoffs coming. Maybe the new owners will figure out that lying nonstop to your audience is a lousy business model. Now, Don Jr. then responded to that. Donald Trump Jr. said, he tagged Elon Musk and he wrote, hey, Elon Musk, I have the funniest idea ever, suggesting, hey, maybe you want to buy it because it's up for sale. Elon Musk responded to that by saying, how much does it cost? Now, look, if you understand the background of that, it's a bit funny because this appears to be in reference to a conversation that Elon Musk had going back to 2017. You might remember it. Many believe that this conversation from 2017 was when Musk was first inspired to buy Twitter. And again, he since renamed it as X. Musk wrote back in 2017, "I love Twitter." Dave Smith, the U.S. chief of Fortune magazine, responded to that saying, "You should buy it then." And Elon Musk responded, "How much is it?" And then he did buy it, of course. Now look, whether Elon Musk is serious or not about buying MSNBC, we don't really know. He tends to joke about stuff like this. Remember when he was saying he wanted to have a cage fight with Mark Zuckerberg of Meta? Mark Zuckerberg looked like he was going to do it. Musk was the one who kind of backed down, according to Zuckerberg. But there was going to be this billionaire cage fight, like Roman gladiators. It'd be like Maximus against the emperor. You know what I mean? Never happened, but they were saying they were going to do it. Point is, Elon Musk enjoys the show, and he tends to enjoy joking around about things like this. We don't know if he's serious or not. The issue with Elon Musk is sometimes he jokes around about things and then ends up doing it. He bought Twitter. He thought it'd be funny to start what's called the Boring Company, and he actually made a company called the Boring Company, which builds like underground tunnel systems. He thought it'd be funny to make flamethrowers, and he actually went and did it. So he does sometimes do things just because he thinks it's funny. Even with his rockets, there was a meme saying, "Can you make the tip more pointy?" And they did that because they thought it was funny, even though it doesn't technically enhance the aerodynamics of the craft. He'll do things because he thinks it's funny. Now, some have noted that if Elon Musk actually did buy MSNBC, it would put him on a similar position to Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos. You know, again, Bezos was a tech billionaire like Elon. Jeff Bezos, again, owns Amazon. And then what did he do? Well, he went and bought the Washington Post. And, you know, also, again, with Elon Musk, if he were to buy a media right now, this could also put him on similar ground with Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek is going to be running the U.S. Department of Government Efficiency alongside Elon Musk. But Vivek also recently bought an activist share in BuzzFeed. And through his activist share, he's actually been bringing in conservative voices to the outlet. He's changing the nature of the news outlet. Alex Jones, again of InfoWars, Alex Jones has also suggested that Elon Musk may get involved in possibly buying InfoWars if the auction moves forward again. Remember, again, the judge brought up issues with the way the auction was handled. Basically what happened, according to the allegations, The Onion had a backdoor kind of deal with the families behind the lawsuit, the Sandy Hook families, to, again, win the auction, even if they did not bid the highest number, because they would expand that using money from the lawsuit. The judge had issues with that, put it on hold. Alex Jones is now suing both The Onion and the families over that. And that will at least delay the auction. But he's also suggesting that Elon Musk may get involved in the auction if it moves forward. If that happens, you're going to have Elon possibly, according to Jones at least, being part of that bid. Now, we don't know what he's going to do. Will Musk buy InfoWars? Will he buy MSNBC? Will he buy MSNBC and put Alex Jones in charge of it? Who knows, right? We have no idea. But Musk has since responded to some of these conversations, and he suggested that he may actually move forward with plans to buy MSNBC. He wrote on X, quote, "The most entertaining outcome, especially if ironic, is most likely." Again, back to the point that he will sometimes do things just because he thinks it's funny or entertaining. Now look, Joe Rogan, again of Joe Rogan podcast, he reacted to this saying, "If you buy MSNBC, I would like Rachel Maddow's job. I will wear the same outfit and glasses, and I will tell the same lies." That's what Joe Rogan said. And then Musk responded to Joe Rogan on that as well, and he said, "Deal." I assume Joe Rogan's joking. I assume he's not going to wear, I don't know if Maddow wears a dress. Maybe she doesn't. But Joe Rogan is suggesting they do it. What a time to be alive, folks. That said, let's jump into some questions. So if you have questions, comments, leave them in the chat. Hit the like button. Again, it helps us quite a bit. The pressures of censorship seem to be finally lifting off of us. So hit the like button. It helps us. And folks, it says jump into some questions. Again, leave your questions or comments in the chat. We'll get to them now. So first off, Bust Douglas, you're saying, why would it be that it has taken so long for the U.S. to respond? Better late than never, I guess. You're talking about the Chinese Communist Party. Well, I can tell you because I was kind of the canary in the coal mine with a lot of this. Back when I first started exposing Chinese Communist Party spy operations in the U.S., there was not a lot on it. There was very little on it. There was very little public reporting, and a lot of people thought I was a conspiracy theorist. I got attacked a lot. A lot of China experts were criticizing me for saying this stuff was happening because a lot of them were still eating out of the CCP's hands back in 2008. It was only around 2010 when the Chinese cyber attack started. The first big one was what they called Operation Aurora, which was when Chinese hackers went after Google and they were trying to get into the Gmail systems. You remember that? It was actually the Chinese cyber attacks that started bringing attention to Chinese spy operations. Because at the time, the Chinese spy operations, a lot of them were run, at least on the military side. United Front would be government side, but they worked with the military. That was under, they've changed it since then, but it was called the General Staff Department. The cyber operations were run under the 3rd Department, General Staff Department, 3rd Department, which was the Signals Intelligence Agency, and also out of the 4th Department, which was the Electronics Warfare Unit. The 2nd Department of that was the Spy Branch, and that worked on human intelligence operations. Now, the military stuff, they also worked with the United Front Work Department, which was the one that I was really involved with exposing back in 2008. But then I also got involved in exposing the whole system, including the military involvement, the propaganda department's involvement with both the military and the United Front. They do what they call liaison work, where the propaganda department writes the narratives, provide it down, and then agents of the CCP go and use those narratives to poison the well with journalists and academics and politicians and experts and the whole 9 yards. Back when I first started reporting this, nobody was talking about it. Again, going back to 2008. And because nobody was talking about it, a lot of people had trouble believing it was real. One of the only other reports at that time, and there were a very small handful of government reports, and within the Chinese community, you had a handful of people coming out against it, right? It wasn't just me. But among English-speaking American journalists, I think I was probably the only one. Now, there was also a report that came out in Canada before that. It was called the Sidewinder Report. And the Canadian equivalent of the CIA, I can't remember the acronym they have for theirs. The Canadian equivalent of it actually had a report called Sidewinder, and in Canada, they actually had a warning saying that many government officials in Canada were actually working for the CCP. They said that a lot of the Canadian government had been subverted by the Chinese Communist Party. And the head of the Canadian equivalent of the CIA got crazy attacked for that, called a racist, called a bigot. They tried pushing him out of office. It was a big deal. And so, that's what was happening to people who tried calling it out back then. Also, because I was one of the only people talking about it on the U.S. side, I got attacked like crazy. I had Chinese agents personally threatening me. I've mentioned this several times before, including when I was doing some on-the-ground investigations in Chinatown. I was surrounded by them one time, and I was personally approached by many of them who directly threatened me. I even had a source who was giving me information on this. They told him, it was a Chinese source living in the United States. These agents told my source that they hired a hitman to chop off one of his hands if he continued talking to me. They slashed the tires of his car. They said they hired a hitman to chop off one of his hands. I exposed it. They never ended up doing it. But, just emphasizing what it was like back then. Over the course of time, this has become very slowly better understood. Again, a lot of it kind of came out from people first understanding oh, hey, Chinese cyber attacks, from there, Chinese spy operations, from there, finally understanding the Confucius Institutes, which me and my colleagues also were the first people to expose back at that time. You know, actually also around the same year, 2007, 2008. You know, we were at the forefront exposing all that. And so finally this stuff's coming out. It actually wasn't until many years later when some people started calling these operations the Chinese secret police stations. Only then did it click for a lot of people. What? China has secret police stations in America. It's a branding thing. I never thought about calling them secret police stations. I was talking about United Front Work Department and, you know, General Staff Department, Third Department, stuff like that. And I think it was just too technical for people. When they heard secret police station, it clicked. And it was only then that people started becoming aware of these things. But now, again, it's being cleaned out. And so, hey, big times. Because I've mentioned before, for me, this is one of my bigger concerns. Because they're not just harassing people. They're not just like extending human rights abuses into America, which is a big deal in and of itself. They're also working to corrupt our politicians. They're working to corrupt business leaders. They're getting American businesses in their pockets. They even use American businesses to lobby on behalf of the Chinese government, our own government. That's the kind of stuff they're doing. This is undermining the sovereignty of the United States. And they do this not just in the US, they do it all throughout Europe, they do it all throughout Canada, they do it aggressively in all the third world countries. They're more aggressive in those countries. This is a global thing. And so if the US starts going after and exposing it, this will also have a ripple effect among all the other nations that respect the United States. And they could also follow suit with investigating it themselves. This is a really big deal. Gina Mikulik, you're saying, this really is the only way to turn the tide on the media landscape. Yeah, you're talking about Elon Musk probably buying MSNBC. Well, you know, I've been thinking about it. You know, the problem you have with a lot of media is a lot of them don't make money. A lot of them don't. You know, the independent media, we have to make money. We will die if we can't make a living, because we don't have mega corporations bankrolling us. Like Epoch Times, you know, we're funded mostly by viewers, so subscribers, and also by donations. Most of it is subscribers. And so, you know, you folks are keeping food on my table, like, right? We don't have a mega corporation putting food on our table. For a lot of these journalists and other media, if you look at their views, they don't get a lot of views. And they kind of muddy the waters in terms of the views because they use other tricks. One trick some news outlets use, have you ever seen those weird ads where it's like, do you have sock disease? And it's like a weird picture, and you click on it and you go to like some weird website and it's like 30 pages and you have to click through. You ever been to those websites? There's a lot of ads that lead you to those websites. Do you know what those actually are? Not all of them, but some of them. Those are click farms. And so what those companies, some of them do, I mean, not all of them, what some of them do is you click on them, and then because it's like 30 pages and you're like, well, geez, I need to know if I have this deadly disease, or I need to know this miracle cure. You keep clicking next page. And what that does is it archives your clicks. Those companies then, they sell those clicks to media or companies. And so there are some media that buy clicks. They buy them. And then what do? They go to advertisers and say, hey, we have like 20 million views in this day or whatever. In reality, in terms of people actually watching their shows, it's a fraction of that. But because they bought the clicks, which are part of a company that they say, okay, this is a subsidiary of our company, this is ours, this is our clicks, even though it wasn't on the content they're using to get the advertisements on, they'll tell the advertisers, look at all these views. The advertiser buys an ad on it, believing they're getting all that traffic, when in reality they're getting just a sliver of it because most of that traffic wasn't actually on the show. That's how part of the game works. They use this as part of their game to screw over advertisers. They do that. There's a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of dirty business. They also create these kind of like big, censorship operations. One of the things that like the new FCC chair incoming, or actually already appointed by Trump, the new Federal Communications chair, Federal Communications Commission chair, is saying right now that they're actually going to start dismantling what they call the censorship cartel, because there are third-party organizations that basically have relations with the ad agencies, and the ad agencies, they kind of have the dam set up on all the different companies that advertise on media or on social media and so on like that, and they'll deny advertisement based on the recommendations of these groups that try to be the gatekeepers of what is true and false. And so if the media is saying, like if the big narrative coming down is saying Russia has colluded to, Trump have hookers pee on Obama's bed, which was the actual accusation back with the whole Trump-Russia gate thing, like crazy stuff like that. Fake news like that, which is promoted and deemed true by not just the media system, but also by a lot of politicians and so on. They say this is unquestionable reality. It turned out to be absolutely fake. We know now the whole thing was fake, but at the time it was unquestionable reality. If you questioned it, they called you a conspiracy theorist. If you questioned the thing that actually was fake, they would go after you. And if you questioned it, they would basically deem you, give you a bad label. You're a conspiracy theorist, you're a spreader of disinformation. They would change your definition on like Wikipedia. They would change your search results. They would even censor you. And they would also deny you advertisement through that whole system they use to define what is true and false. That's part of the way that this cartel, as it's now being defined, has worked. And so back to the point where Gina Mikulik was saying, this is really the only way to turn the tide on the media landscape, just buying these outlets. That's maybe true. Because the way it's set up is, let's put it this way, accurate or not, honest or not, they're being bankrolled through a monopolistic system. And even without making money, they survive. Even without making money. There are some companies that want to control media, not because the media makes money, but because the media can control the narratives that benefit the company. That was one of the big arguments going back to the early 1900s with banks, by the way, when a lot of the banking systems began buying up news outlets. That was one of the big problems you had in the early 1900s. That was the problem you had with some of the reforms they made to media law, a lot of which happened, I believe, under Bill Clinton, where they changed some of the media laws, which allowed the consolidation of media under even fewer corporations, to the point we have now, where you have it's like 5 or 6 corporations run 90% of the media. And the funny thing is these media then try to make it sound like, hey, we're the little guy, we're the honest ones. Don't question us. Everybody else is lying, but they're working for all these mega corporations, which again have interest in the issues they're pushing, and they can't tell the truth a lot of times, and they don't tell the truth a lot of times. It is possible that the only way you can fix this is by having people interested in maybe making these outlets more balanced, or bringing in additional voices, or changing some of the journalistic standards so they have more integrity and they're not censoring on behalf of prevailing false narratives in order to advance these things. Maybe that is the way to do it, but I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. I also believe on the other side of all of this, that if the new FCC chair comes in and actually does do what he says he's going to do, which is go after the censorship cartel, which is the collaboration of all these organizations to target and destroy their competitors, independent journalists like myself, by the way, all right, who they want to go at, who they've been going after, that they will dismantle the system that has allowed them to suppress their competitors. And if they do that, that means that all the independent voices will begin competing on the same level playing field as all the big corporate media. which means that maybe I'll be competing on the same level finally as all these big guys at the big corporate media. We'll see, along with all the other independent voices. I'm all about honest competition. I don't believe that there should just be one news outlet or something like that. I wouldn't want to be in that position personally. But I believe in a level playing field for competition. Again, equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. And I think that type of healthy competition is what we've been needing in the media landscape for a long time. Because the monopoly they've had is the problem that has caused a lot of problems, right? All right, let's see. Paula Salazar, you're saying, I swear the CCP reminds me of Pinky and the Brain, trying to take over the world. A classic, by the way. What was that? Was that Tiny Toons Adventures? I was a kid when that came out. Yeah, Pinky and the Brain. It was the two lab mice who escaped every night, and whenever they escaped, one of the mice would ask the other one, "What are we going to do tonight, Brain?" And he says, "Same thing we do every night. Try to take over the world." That is very much like what the CCP is doing. I'd imagine the CCP leaders, they wake up every day and they ask each other, "So what are we going to do today?" Same thing we do every day. Try to take over the world. And they rub their hands together, menacingly or something. That's basically what they do. Maybe not in that exact... with those exact words, but that's basically literally what they do every day. Let's see here. EDL, you're saying, U.S. is like a big locomotive. It takes time to get going. Yeah, a lot of people have said it's like the sleeping giant. That was one of the famous quotes after Pearl Harbor, when, I don't know if this was the actual quote. You never know with history and the way it's painted. I think there was an old movie, and I believe it was actually called Pearl Harbor. Remember they used to do these epic war movies back before they had like CGI and they could just make everything like on a CGI green screen set? Back in the day when they did real epic movies. If you want to watch some great war movies, go and watch The Longest Day. Go and watch Pearl Harbor, the original. Those were fantastic movies. Pearl Harbor, notably, I had a lot of family there because my family, a lot of my family's from Hawaii, right? And my great-grandfather, he had like 11 brothers and sisters, something crazy like that. A lot of his he was in the Navy, and a lot of his brothers were in the Navy, and they were there when Pearl Harbor hit. They were Filipino, so all they could be was chefs, and they never complained about it. They took pride in it, right? They loved what they did. But they were running up and down the docks trying to find each other when the Japanese planes were coming in. But thank you, Idaho Rocks. Tora, Tora, Tora. Thank you. That's the name of it. Fantastic movie. I used to watch all these with my grandpa as a kid, actually. Because not my great grandpa, but my grandpa. He is a Vietnam veteran. He's a Marine. He says there's no such thing as a former Marine, so he's a retired Marine, right? But we used to always hang out and watch all these old war movies. Tora, Tora, Tora. That's the name of it. But there's a famous quote in there where after this whole thing, the Japanese general, they're celebrating, good job, you fought well for the emperor or whatever. And the Japanese general is quiet and he looks into the distance and he says, I fear all we've done is awakened a sleeping giant. And that was kind of the big, this is the beginning, not the end kind of moment of the movie. Great movie. But that line, too, is something that you really do see with the United States. And something I think you see with good people in general. You can push a good person, and they're going to turn the other cheek. They're going to be like, all right, I have impulse control. I'm not going to hit back. You know what I mean? I'm a religious person. I'm not going to fight you. Like, what are you going to do, right? And then you keep pushing them. And they're like, look, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not this kind of guy, but you need to stop, right? You need to cut this out. And they keep pushing you. And then eventually the guy starts pushing it. They start going after his family. They start going after his kids. And the guy says, you know what? You can hit me. You can give me trouble, but you start going after my family. That's where I draw the line. You do it again, it's over. And the guy does it again. When you see righteousness rise up, you realize how weak evil is, because you will see the evil side get absolutely stomped. And that is what history shows us. When good people join together, it is an unstoppable, terrifying force. But it's very rare to see, because good people tend to not want to do that, right? Good people, because they have moral restraint, they don't want to do it. America as a country tends to be that way. America will fight a little bit, you know what I mean? Like America, when we go to war, we have to create additional standards so we don't kill our enemies too bad. They'll make it so, okay, guys, you're annihilating them. How about you don't shoot them unless they shoot you first? Which, by the way, thank you, Congress. They passed that during Vietnam, right? You can't shoot them unless they shoot you first. Good. Rules of engagement. They will create standards to make it so that we can't use the full force of what we're capable of. Because the full force of what we're capable of is such an overwhelming, annihilating force. You have never seen America fight to the full extent we're capable of. Maybe not since World War II. I think we fought with everything we had in World War II. But America now, in the power we have, is very strong. The issue you have in this country, when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to Chinese Communist Party subversion, when it comes to the drug cartels manufacturing fentanyl and sending their drugs in the United States and killing Americans by the tens of thousands, right? I think total is like 200,000, something crazy like that. It's like 70,000 a year, upwards of that, if you include not just fentanyl. It's crazy. That happens because we're not doing anything about it. I was watching some interviews. I think Joe Rogan was talking to, excuse me. Joe Rogan was talking to one of the guys, I believe from Black Rifle Coffee Company, special operations, right? Former special operations. He was saying, look, if the cartels have Delta Force or Tier 1 operators sent after them, they're going to be gone in a day. They will be facing these guys riding around in their pickup trucks and wearing their skull masks. They're going to see what it's like to cower in their beds, because it's such a murderous, overwhelming force. When righteous people, and a lot of people in America are like that, have had enough, when they get tired of it. And you're going to watch them annihilate those guys, which they've only been able to do what they do for as long as they have because we haven't been doing that. A lot of the issues we have are only because righteous people have not fought back. We've been saying, all right, hit me again, I'll turn the other cheek. All right, fine, I guess I'll let you go do that again. I don't feel like having the trouble with it. We're at the very end of that line because they went after our kids. They went after our kids. They went after our families. They went after our country. They went after everything else. And Americans finally are saying, you know what? You crossed that line. You crossed that line. And that's where we're at right now as a country, right? That's what's really happened in this country. People are sick of communist subversion. We're sick of seeing all the things it did, and they crossed that line. That's what you're watching happen right now, is the righteous people, the good people are saying, I've had enough. That's what you're watching. Realitysreal.com, you're saying, it's never enough for communists to destroy their own people. They have to kill anyone and everyone who is independent, free, and happy. Eventually, they self-destruct as a result of acting against human nature. Absolutely true. So, in fact, when I say absolutely, I mean absolutely, because that's part of the communist doctrine. They believe communism cannot be truly achieved until it's achieved everywhere. Just having the Soviet Union was not enough. Just having communist China is not enough. They can only create pure communism, they believe, when tradition, religion, morality, capitalism, whatever you want to call it, is destroyed in every single part of the world. Because what happens? they practice communism. It makes life absolutely miserable. People say, I don't want to live in this hellhole. And they go try to climb the Berlin Wall. They go try to crawl through the minefield at the North Korean DMZ to get to South Korea because they don't want to live in communism. They try to, they hop on you have people like hopping on basketballs and trying to float across the Taiwan Strait. There are stories like that because they don't want to live in communism. People, when they see what communism does, and they don't want to be in a genocidal maniac country that persecutes you for believing in religion or trying to be a good person, yeah, you want to escape. Communism says you can only have real communism when there's nowhere to escape to. That's the narrative. That's why they hate America so much. Watch the documentary I did, The Final War. I talk about this. In their own words, the CCP says, we live, you die. That's the actual slogan. We live, you die. The CCP does not believe that they can coexist with a free country. That in order for the CCP to survive, they need to destroy the United States. They say this publicly. And it's crazy that we trade with them. It's crazy that we have deals with them. It's crazy that we work with them when they're saying this publicly. They believe they cannot survive unless they kill us. We live, you die. That's the actual slogan. They've been saying it going back to Mao Zedong. They've said it under every single Communist Party leader. They still say it. And still, for some reason, we do business with them and think they're our buddies, and they're saying this publicly. They don't hide it. They don't even hide it. They say it. And again, going back to communist ideology, that's what it is. Just as Reality is Real saying, it's never enough for communists to destroy their own people, which they do. They've killed 100 million people on old estimates, go by the Black Book of Communism. Current estimates say they killed upwards of 150 million people, and probably counting because the CCP still has genocides. Yeah, they have to kill anyone and everyone who is independent, free, and happy. And that is exactly what they're doing, exactly what they're trying to do. And I'll say right now that people are finally waking up to it. People are finally waking up to it, folks. That said, you're getting ready to watch the awakening of the sleeping giant, I believe. And that's what we're watching starting to take place right now. The giant's wiping the sleep out of its eyes, and that's where we're at as a country. That said, folks, thank you so much for being here. It is Thanksgiving week, so that'll be Thursday. Folks, that said, join me again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to share this video. Hit the like button. It helps us quite a bit. And as always, folks, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.